A ridiculous Karen ran over my fence and then parked her car in my garden without my permission. This is destruction of property and illegal trespassing. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. There was a time where I really thought that gardening was a simple pleasure, relaxing and something I could do to get away from the daily stress of my 9-to-5 job. But when my ugly neighbor moved in next door to me a couple months ago and decided to park her cars on my lawn and ruin my garden, well, that is when I got fired up and decided to take matters into my own hands. I'm not really one for starting arguments and I prefer to keep to myself. I love getting my hands dirty, but not in the legal sense. If I had it my way, some people would just be locked up for good, like my entitled neighbor Karen. She thinks that everything is hers and she's entitled to everything. She has ran into the law numerous times with other people in my neighborhood. My garden sits on a 2-acre property. There are some bushes behind my garden and right beside it some plants and small shrubs where you can barely see the driveway. Yet it is visible and clearly indicates property lines. I enjoy my space and I love my peace and quiet, but this neighbor just gets on my nerves. Let me tell you, one Saturday things really went down south. It turned out that one afternoon she ended up having a party and invited lots of people over. They all parked their cars on my garden, but later I came to find out something else. It was not just that they parked all my cars on my garden, it's that this entitled Karen drove all the cars through my garden because they were basically having a donut party outside in the driveway, spinning around and causing havoc with their cars driving around in circles and playing loud music. Her driveway went right up against my fence and I thought clearly she can see the property line, right? After finding out about all this from one of my other neighbors who had problems with her, I went and investigated and tried to find some footage with my backyard trail camera that usually points on my garden. Lately, I've been having problems with squirrels and other vermin getting in my garden, so I wanted to see how to get rid of them. Well, it turns out that the vermin were actually my neighbor and she was the problem. I caught it all on camera. I mean, it is my side of the fence and then hers begins next to my driveway, not in my garden. I just could not stand it. How could she not see that this is my garden? After seeing all the cars parked there and never moved, I went outside and screamed at her after trying to confront her in a peaceful manner. At that point, I lost my nerves. What the hell do you think you're doing? You just knocked over my fence and ruined my vegetables. The entitled Karen stood there for a second, and then as if a giant beluga whale spat out all their water, she comes at me with a monsoon of hateful comments saying, "This is my property, F you. And can't you see that I'm trying to have a party? Now leave, you overgrown ape." The last comment she made after I begged her to stop and leave, she said, "I don't see any vegetables planted here, and if there was, I would stick some of those up your rear and teach you a lesson." I about had it there and my face was as red as a radish at that point. I went back inside to try and calm down and I splashed my face with some cold water. I needed to get away from her and her bad attitude. After that, I ran to my logbox to find the copy of the deed and the county line drawings of the property lines that I printed out when I bought my house. I went back out and waved it in her face. "Look at this, can't you see that this is my property? Here are the lines, this is where yours starts and this is where mine begins. You clearly ran over my fence and now you have to replace that." She laughed at me and said, "I ain't replacing anything. You don't even have the property lines as proof. That county assessor always fudges the property lines. Everywhere I've lived in this town, they do that crap, so you need to re-examine that. And I sure as hell ain't moving my cars. This is my driveway right here. I can do whatever the hell I want." I ran back inside infuriated, not knowing what to do. By the time the next week rolled around, ugly Karen had her car still parked there, even though her friends were gone. I've no idea where they had gone and what they were doing. I felt like she was trying to make a point, and sure enough, she has. I went and confronted her again and knocked on her door. "Can you please move all these cars? They are in my driveway, in my way. You literally tore through my fence and you refused to replace it. You need to replace it right now." "I'm taking this into my own hands if you don't, and I'm going to report you." Ugly Karen slammed the door on me. After that, I didn't hear from her for a while. I went home and called the local police. I filed the police report on her since she was refusing to budge. They came over and checked out the vehicles and knocked on her door. She did not answer. The next day, I talked with the sheriff. He mentioned that I should probably go to small claims court with my niece since she is claiming that the property is hers and that she can park her and her friends' vehicles there. One time I went outside and she was there standing on her doorstep and gave me the middle finger. She basically shooed me away and said, "Mind your own business and leave my stuff alone and just go on your own way. I'm doing what I want." I was now getting even more ticked off. The sheriff called me the next day and said, "We've been trying to get a hold of her," and I finally did, and we had a conversation and she is claiming that she denies everything and that this is her side of the property. I suggest you go to small claims court. My court date finally arrived just a few weeks ago, and up until that point I was infuriated, embarrassed and beaten down by this Karen who's entitled and thought that she could literally just do whatever she wanted on my property. In the trial, I had evidence that she had trespassed and violated my property by parking her vehicles and driving through my fence, ruining my garden. I had everything on camera with my trail camera. The judge ruled in my favor. I even told them that she was harassing me every time I would go to my car to my driveway. One time I even recorded her on my phone, her making comments to me saying hurtful and belligerent things. I presented that to the judge. During the trial, it was revealed that this Karen had moved around a lot in my hometown. She had claimed that the property lines were hers, where she had lived, and made all kinds of false claims and accusations. At one point at a previous residence, she had built a deer stand for hunting on her neighbor's lawn. The neighbor took her to court for that. It was just crazy. She had countless other incidents involving property lines, and it turns out that she pissed off a lot of other neighbors. And I was not the only one, but I was not gonna back down now. She thinks that she can just come along and do whatever she wants. Well, that's not how it goes. The next court date I was awarded a restraining order, but Karen didn't like that though. She still continued to park the cars there, claiming that her party friends went overseas and needed to park there because they lived in bad neighborhoods where they might get broken into. It's funny how they will break down my fence and park there, but when it comes to parking their vehicle on their own property, they won't do it for fear that they will get broken into. What a bunch of BS. In the end, she still had to pay a trespassing fine for continually parking her vehicles there. She was fined heavily as this went on for weeks. Those court documents of property lines really held up, and the court upheld that and listened to me. But she refused to think and claimed that it was her property all along. She did not waver, and I wasn't backing down either. I continued to have my trail camera in and recorded her coming and going, each time violating the restraining order of being within a certain number of feet. They finally arrested her ass and put her in jail. I never saw her again after that. Her house went into foreclosure and a new neighbor moved in. They had no car and took an Uber all the time. They even helped me grow my vegetable garden again and told me that I can even plant vegetables in their yard. We shared meals together and laughed about the old Karen, who is now locked behind bars. I was even awarded money for the damages done to my yard in small claims court, and now I can go back to my gardening again, and life is good. The next one is titled, "My mom stole $30,000 from my savings and I don't know how it happened." So last night I checked my bank account to see that my mom had stolen about $30,000 from my savings account. The withdrawal showed up on my end as miscellaneous debit. My mom had stolen it last week and I didn't notice until today, due to the fact that I only check my bank account around once a week. If you're wondering why I don't check it more often, well, it's just because my dad allows me to use his credit card for groceries while I'm in college and I only ever buy groceries for myself. The only time I check my bank account is when I have to pay for some expense, for example bills, etc. My mom and I have not spoken in more than a year due to reasons that are not really important. I'm just emphasizing that we don't have a relationship. My dad also doesn't speak to her, only through lawyers. When I first left her house at 18, my mom gave me nothing, withholding my birth certificate, ID, etc. I had to painstakingly replace everything. I finally was able to find a bank where I could open an account with the forms of ID I could provide. I went to the bank alone and opened a bank account. That bank account was opened by me. I was the only one who signed for it and not even my dad had any access to it whatsoever, of course since I'm an adult. So fast forward to today when I called the bank after seeing that all the money from my savings account was gone. This money I had saved up over the span of around a year where my dad paid me generously while working for him. The bank revealed that it was my mom who took the money. The bank told me that my mom was a signer on my own bank account and that my bank account was actually a joint account. This was a revelation to me as I opened this account on my own. I don't even know how my mom knew my savings account number because again, I've not spoken to her in over a year. They told me for this reason that they could not file a dispute, but that I would have to go to my local branch, which is not local anymore since I moved away for college, to fix the problem as they were the ones who transferred the money. Of course, I was just floored and confused and asked how a joint account is made. They said that for a joint account to be created, both people must be present, so I went and made my account alone. I, of course, am going to have to follow all the steps after this, going to the original branch to see what happened, talking to the manager, closing the account, and I'm gonna be switching banks altogether while this is being investigated. Can someone please tell me how my mom was able to do this? Was it a mistake on my end? How likely is it that I can get my money back? Edit, to add some info, my mom is a very powerful woman and she has done things that are worse than this. I cannot help but feel defeated already, because she probably found a legal loophole. Edit, this post has gotten so much bigger than I thought it would. I've taken some of your advice and I talked to my dad about possibly using his legal team for this, which I was planning on doing anyways. My dad of course agreed right away and told me not to take any action quite yet before we talk to the lawyers and take a look at all of the physical paperwork from the bank. I'll post an update in the near future about the conclusion of my predicament. Thank you all so much for the great advice and please wish me luck, I'm really gonna need it. I'll make a master post explaining everything that happens when it's all over. Comment number 1, it sounds like you messed up. I don't know how you wouldn't know that you have a joint account, those are not so easy to set up. Comment number 2, nobody can tell you, and the bank won't, how she impersonated you, just file a police report. I would suggest contact the bank and give them the number and escalate it to the fraud department. File a CFPB complaint if the bank won't help you. This is criminal, theft, fraud and identity theft. And now we will read an update to the story. Hey all, this update may be super underwhelming because I found out this was all my fault and I feel so stupid right now. So I took all of your guys' advice and the first thing I went and recovered my original physical documents from the bank at my dad's house. It is Thanksgiving break right now, so I was back in my hometown from school. I also looked at my original statements and saw that all of the accounts only had my name on them. This gave me so much hope that someone had screwed up and I could just get my money back. My dad took me to the bank with my cousin for moral support and I spoke to the guy that I had opened an account with a year and a half ago. What he told me made me feel like an idiot. So my mom had opened a savings account back in 2011 where her and I were joint owners. Every time I was paid money to my checking, I was depositing it into my savings account. And well, it turns out I had only opened a checking account with that bank and I was the sole owner of that checking account, but the savings was owned by my mom and I. They told me unfortunately because of that nothing she did was illegal and I really couldn't do anything to get my money back. The reason why I didn't question anything was when I logged into the mobile portal they have, both the checking and savings account showed up, making me think that I had opened both when I had gone to the bank to open my checking. I was depositing money into this savings account with both my mom and I on it this whole time, and she was watching it build up so she could just take it all away. I'm disappointed, but there's nothing I can really do. I'm just blaming myself a lot, but like I said in the original post, I'm certainly not struggling with money, and so I'm blessed in that way. My dad has been really caring and supportive during this, and he's telling me that it wasn't my fault and that she knew it was my money, so she shouldn't have touched it. This is all just a learning lesson. I'm definitely not making this mistake again. I think my dad blames himself for what happened because my mom became really bitter after their divorce. He offered to repay me all of the money on my mom's behalf, but I cannot take that from him. It will all come back eventually. Thank you all for such good advice on the last post. I'm really grateful. I think I'm just gonna take the loss on this one and choose to walk away. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, even though it was clearly OP's fault in this case, at least to some degree, I still feel super bad for OP because nobody deserves to have a mom like this that steals money from you. What a sad, sad situation. And the next one is titled, My ex-wife has terminal cancer and she wants me to get her pregnant so she can experience the gift of being a mom. We had an amicable divorce. One of her biggest life goals was for us to have kids, me too, but it never happened while we were together. I recently gave her a visit and she told me that she wants to experience the gift of being a mom before she passes away. She won't make it to see our hypothetical child be born, of course, but she said she wants to have the experience of being a mom and that it would make her life feel complete. I am shocked to say the least. I can understand where she's coming from to a degree, but it also sounds a little insane to me. I don't know if even possible how pregnancy will affect her, but she told me not to worry about it. I told her I'll consider it, but I feel selfish for even considering it. I think having a child/being pregnant should be intentional and not just something to cross off. However, I know I cannot fully comprehend what she is going through. And now we got a comment to the story and it reads like this. Maybe OP can buy her one of those born-again dolls. They have heartbeats in them plus baby noises, soft limbs like a real baby, but weighted too. I mean, maybe that would be therapeutic to hold and talk to as she goes through these emotions. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you're curious why the word therapeutic got so messed up there, that is really easy to explain. So whenever I read stories, I obviously have them in a text document after I copied them from a website, for example, and then after at least correcting some grammar mistakes, I will run a script that will remove all curse words such as the RAPE word, and I guess that is why therapeutic got so messed up there. Anyway, the next comment reads like this: if she wants to hold a baby and coo to it, then the solution is easy. Either buy a reborn doll, or if you know someone who has a baby, get that person to give the baby to her to hold for a few minutes or so. If it is pregnancy, well, you can always buy her a pregnancy test. And by the way, Ripe Stars, so far, is it just me, or do the comments seem not really, how can I say, maybe serious enough given the situation OP is in? I feel like this is not the place to make jokes here. Anyway, the next comment said, what's the plan for the baby? Abort it or let it die with her? You become a single father or adopt it out? This is insane. The next comment, as I read it, she would not be able to carry to full term, as the prognosis is that she's only got months to live. And then OP answered, this is correct. I don't know where people are getting the idea that she will carry to full term. There won't be a child to raise. I wanted to give an update considering a lot of people are messaging me and I didn't want to keep up with all of them. So here's what we decided to do. First of all, we came to the conclusion of not going through with this idea. However, we did decide to rekindle our sexual relationship. Don't worry, I used protection. I prepared ahead of time and I had a feeling this might happen. I just didn't want to be the one to initiate things. Her asking me to get her pregnant was a pretty good final indication. I also got her a reborn baby doll and she cried with happiness over it. She said this will help a lot. Thanks to the people who suggested it. In any case, this is the plan moving forward. Also, this experience got us closer again and I'll continue to support her until she passes. And then some comments said, oh god, that's so bittersweet, you're a great person and don't you ever forget it. OP answered, yeah, it's bittersweet, it really put things into perspective that life is short. I'm really gonna miss her when she passes, but I'm gonna enjoy my time with her while I can. Someone else said, you're a good man. Updates would be appreciated, but completely understand if you choose not to. Then OP said, I want updates, so consider this as my final. I'll just continue on with my life. Had to get opinions on it because I thought it was crazy. I really appreciate the people who suggested the reborn doll and those who wish us well. And the next one is titled, Am I the jerk for not allowing my parents to sleep in the same bed? I think you know where this is going, but there's no definitive answer on who's in the wrong. Also, for simplicity's sake, I'll be saying parents, but it is my mother and stepfather. So my mother and stepdad have been together since I was little, so I'm a 25-year-old woman with 2 older siblings, both male. When we were growing up, we were never allowed girlfriends or boyfriends to spend the night, which I felt was fair enough. When my brothers got to about 16, however, their girlfriends were allowed to spend nights, but they had to sleep in the spare room. Again, fair, that makes sense to me. I was always somewhat of a tomboy, so as you can imagine, teen boys didn't show much interest in me romantically, so I did not get my first boyfriend until I was already 18. My parents wouldn't allow him to spend the night at all, despite us both being over 18. I wouldn't have minded if my brothers had been held to that standard, but I felt as if they were favored over me. It's not even because they disliked my boyfriend at the time either, everyone seemed to love him. That relationship did not last more than 6-ish months, so I dropped it after a while. I got with my now fiancé when I was 22, and we've been engaged for a year. We are getting married in only a few months. Still, just like every time before, my parents would not allow him to spend the nights until a few months after we got engaged, but after I brought it up to them. It wasn't a conflict, but they knew I was irritated and allowed him to start using the spare room. We moved in together not long after, so it didn't really matter. Now, I may be an a-hole. So, my mother asked about wedding planning, the first time she even contacted me since the move, and I told her I still had a lot to sort out, but I was getting through it, and she practically insisted on coming up to me and having a week of mother-daughter bonding time where she could help me with wedding planning. My fiancé is not a very social person and is happy to be the moneybags behind my wedding decisions. He just likes to give little opinions and I'm sure to include them when he does. My parents arrived and we spent the first day going out to dinner. I would like to point out that the two are not married and are steadfast that they won't be getting married again. Both of them divorced already, my stepdad twice. So as the night was slowing down, they asked to be shown to their room. I directed my mom to one guest room and my stepfather to another. We have a 3-bedroom with no kids yet, so we have the space. My mom said that there was plenty of room in one for them both and instructed my stepdad to come in with her. I explained that just like she told me, it was my house and I didn't want them sharing a bed in my house. I basically repeated word for word what she would tell me when I would complain about my brothers getting better treatment than me when it came to their partner. I told her that actually they were in the same position I was in because neither of us were married. She tried saying it was different because they'd been together for almost 20 years. I told them that it didn't matter because this is my house and my decision is final. Just like how my mother would shut down any discussion about it back then. I was sure to mention how my brothers were allowed their partners and I wasn't, but she claimed I was making it up. They stayed the night and left for home the next day, which I preferred because I was happy wedding planning on my own and I haven't heard from them since. My grandma has called to tell me off for it though, so I'm wondering if I'm in the wrong. Am I the a-hole Reddit? And yeah, ripe stars, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. Edit, a lot of people are confused. At my mom's house, we were not allowed to ever sleep in the same bed ever. Only months after we got engaged did my mother allow him to sleep in the spare room. Also, I said I don't mind the rules they have, it's their home, but it was the double standard for me. I had to wait until 25 to have my fiancé stay at my house when my brothers could have whoever they wanted from 16. We were engaged by the time they let him. I was no longer a child and it's not like I've been holding on to resentment for years after it stopped, as some misguided people claim. It was months ago it ended, also my intention was never to make them sleep the whole week separately. It was initially a, now the power is in my hands, do you see the error of your ways? If they did, we could have moved on and laughed about it and they would have slept in the same bed. Because they didn't and doubled down and started getting aggressive with me, claiming I was making things up. I stuck to it. I know I'm being a-hole-ish, but am I the a-hole in this situation? Update, so it's been a while and my post blew up. I even saw it on Facebook, which is crazy. So now the update, after I let the dust settle, I contacted my brothers and asked for their perception and they mostly agreed with me. They said exactly what I said, that their girlfriends were staying in their beds at 18, let alone not even allowed to sleep in the house at 22. They mentioned that our parents only mentioned our disagreement once to them in passing when they got home, but once my oldest brother reminded them that it was true that they were allowed partners over as teens, they never brought it up again. It took a couple weeks, but my mom called me to talk. At first she maintained that it was probably only a few times they were allowed girlfriends to sleep over, but I was quick to shut it down. Everything she said I had an answer for. I admit, stress from wedding planning was taking a toll on my self-control. It ended with my mom admitting that she must have forgotten it all, so I just left it. A win is a win. She asked if we could put it all behind us and I said as soon as she apologized that we could. She said that she understands, but it may have come across as sexist and favoritism, but she didn't mean it to. They were just overly protective of me being their only girl and didn't realize how that would come across to me. It may not seem like much from my mom, that's as good as a bunch of flowers and a please forgive me card, so the wedding went off without a hitch in November and everyone had a whale of a time. It was nothing short of magical and I had all my family there with me. Couldn't have asked for anything more, so to everyone saying how my parents were never gonna talk to me again and that I was prioritizing petty revenge over a relationship with my parents, please touch grass. If something so small would separate you from your family, that says more about you and your family than it does about me and mine. We all have faults, but come on, bit dramatic. There are also lots of people calling me a justified a-hole, which I kind of get, and a lot saying that I'm not the a-hole. The ones convinced I'm being a hellspawn on earth just make me laugh. People talking about how I have no respect. I respect your opinion, but I vehemently disagree with it. To me, I was just showing the same respect I was given. Thank you everyone that was invested. I really need the validation that I'd done the right thing when my mind was all fuzzy and clouded from stress. General consensus is that I was not an a-hole, but I was petty, whether you love the pettiness or not, and I can get behind that. Not the most drama-filled update, but I wanted to put a close on all this. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.